I'm just tired of the lies and everything, of what they said I did. I know for a fact it wasn't true. I didn't headlock it. Those are the words Carlos Losos Way spoke in court this week, finally breaking his silence in the Romika Meeks Blackmon murder case. The man accused of holding Romika in a chokehold while his girlfriend shot her to death is claiming he's innocent. He says prosecutors are lying. He says he was just trying to defuse the situation. He wants justice through the truth. But here's the kicker. While Carlos is in court proclaiming his innocence, Quadajah Holly Johnson just got hit with 5 additional charges on top of the first-degree murder she's already facing. And the judge denied her bond. Again. She's staying locked up. This case just exploded, and what came out of that courtroom on Thursday is absolutely wild.
We are learning new details this afternoon about that deadly shooting in the South Loop back in September. A young mother got killed.
Yeah. Quadajah Holly Johnson is accused of shooting Romika Blackmon. Johnson says it was self-defense.
Well, after new charges were filed last week, Johnson was back in court today. Tia Ewing's got more on what happened. Tia.
A lot has happened, Terrence and Sylvia, since we started reporting this story. And this is 20 pages of documents that I had to pour over today. We already reported on the murder charge, but now there are 5 more charges. This court document filed just this week in my hands lays out the defense's argument for why bond consideration should be granted to the 31-year-old pregnant mom. The motion argues that the responsibility to prove the case lies entirely with prosecutors. The defense says the state has not met that burden, pointing out that Johnson has no prior criminal history. She had a license to carry a firearm. Still, the state has said the victim, Romika Blackmon, did not have a gun. Now,
let's start with Quadajah Holly Johnson. Johnson appeared in court Thursday, January 9th, and prosecutors hit her with 5 additional charges on top of the first-degree murder charge she's been fighting since December. That's right, 5 more charges. We're still waiting for prosecutors to specify exactly what those 5 charges are, but the fact that they're piling on more counts means they're building an even stronger case against her. Johnson is already facing charges for first-degree murder. These additional charges? They're insurance. Prosecutors are making absolutely sure that even if a jury doesn't convict her on the murder charge, she's still going away for a very long time on the other counts. Her defense team tried to fight back. They argued that Johnson should be released on bond while the case moves through the system. They brought up all the same arguments they've been making since day one. She has no criminal record. She had a valid concealed carry license. She was pregnant at the time of the shooting. She cooperated with investigators. She stayed in Chicago for 91 days. They also claim they have evidence that contradicts the state's version of events. According to Johnson's lawyers, 911 recordings and surveillance video tell a different story than what prosecutors are claiming. They're challenging the credibility of the state's key witness, saying that person's account doesn't match up with the physical evidence. But here's the thing. None of that mattered to the judge. Bond denied. Again, Quadajah Johnson is staying behind bars. No house arrest, no electronic monitoring, no going home to await trial. She's in Cook County Jail, and that's where she's staying until this case is resolved. The judge looked at the evidence, looked at the severity of the charges, and decided that a woman accused of shooting another woman in the face in front of children during school drop-off is not getting out. Period. Now let's talk about the moment everyone's been waiting for. Carlos finally speaks. For months, Carlos Smith Sr., also known as Carlos Losos Way, has been silent. He hasn't been charged. He's been walking around free. He's posted on social media. He's given a few interviews disputing certain details, but he hasn't had to stand in front of journalists to answer for his role in Romeka's death. Until Thursday. Carlos was at the court hearing for Quadajah Johnson, and he spoke to journalists outside the court.
I'm just tired of the lies and everything, what they said I did. I know for a fact it wasn't true. I didn't headlock her. I didn't beat her with the door. I only try to diffuse the situation. They keep deflecting away from that. And what I did what they saying I did made it sound harsh, and I didn't do that. So we need justice. We need justice to be served too, the truth.
Let's break that down. Carlos is denying that he put Romeka in a headlock. He's denying that he beat her with a car door. He's claiming he was trying to defuse the situation. whatever that means. He says prosecutors are deflecting from the truth and making what he did sound worse than it actually was. He wants justice through the truth. But here's what prosecutors say Carlos actually did. They allege that he physically assaulted Romeka before she was killed. They claim he restrained her, making her vulnerable and unable to escape. And here's the detail that's making people's jaws drop. Prosecutors allege that Carlos fist-bumped Quadajah Johnson after the shooting. A fist bump. After the mother of his child was just shot to death? Carlos denies all of it. He says it's lies. He says he was just trying to keep the peace. He says the truth will set him free. So who do we believe? The multiple witnesses who say they saw Carlos restraining Romeka? The prosecutors who are building a case that Carlos and Johnson coordinated this attack? Or Carlos himself, who says everyone's lying about him? Here's what I want to know from you. Do you believe Carlos? Does his statement sound like someone telling the truth? Or does it sound like someone trying to save himself? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button now, because this case is far from over. Now let's lay out what prosecutors are saying versus what Carlos is claiming, because the contrast is stark. Prosecutors say, Carlos physically assaulted Romeka before she was shot. He restrained her. He made it impossible for her to escape or defend herself. And after Quadajah shot Romeka multiple times, Carlos fist-bumped Johnson. That fist bump, if true, suggests celebration, coordination, agreement. It suggests they were on the same team, and Romeka was the target. Carlos says he didn't put Romeka in a headlock. He didn't beat her with a car door. He was just trying to defuse the situation. Everything prosecutors are saying about what he did is a lie designed to make him look worse than he actually was. So what's the truth? Well, we have witnesses. Multiple parents who were dropping their kids off at school that morning saw what happened. Their statements are on record. Their testimony is going to be used in court, and according to those witnesses, Carlos was physically involved in restraining Romeka. We also have Johnson's own actions that morning. According to the evidence, she went to the car, retrieved a firearm, came back, and shot Romeka multiple times. She paused between shots, a detail that prosecutors say proves this wasn't panicked self-defense, but a calculated execution. And here's the question that keeps nagging at everyone following this case. If Carlos was really just trying to defuse the situation, why didn't he stop Quadajah from going to get the gun? Why didn't he step between them? Why didn't he call 911? Why didn't he try to save Romeka after she was shot? Because according to prosecutors, Carlos didn't do any of those things. Instead, he allegedly fist-bumped the woman who just killed the mother of his child. Johnson's defense team is not going down without a fight. They're challenging everything. First, they're saying the state's key witness isn't credible. Now, we don't know who this witness is, whether it's one of the parents who saw the shooting, whether it's someone connected to Romeka or Carlos, or whether it's someone else entirely. But Johnson's lawyers are saying this person's testimony can't be trusted. They're also pointing to 911 recordings and surveillance video that they claim tell a different story. What that story is, they haven't fully revealed yet. But the implication is clear. The defense is going to argue that what prosecutors say happened isn't what actually happened. Maybe they're going to argue that Romeka was the aggressor. Maybe they're going to claim that the physical evidence shows Johnson was farther away than witnesses said. Maybe they're going to present audio that makes it sound like Romeka was threatening Johnson and Carlos. Whatever their strategy is, they're building toward a self-defense argument. Johnson has maintained from day one that she feared for her life. Her lawyers are trying to create enough reasonable doubt that a jury might believe her. But here's the problem with that strategy. You have multiple witnesses who saw it. You have the pause between shots that suggests deliberation, not panic. And you have Carlos's alleged fist bump after the shooting, which completely undermines any claim that this was a tragic accident or a desperate act of self-defense. And why hasn't Carlos been charged? This is the question that keeps everyone up at night. If Carlos played a role in Romeka's death, if he restrained her, if he assaulted her, if he fist-bumped Johnson after the shooting, why is he walking around free? There are a few possible explanations. Possibility 1. prosecutors are using Carlos as a witness against Johnson. If Carlos is willing to testify about what happened that morning, about Johnson's state of mind, about the events leading up to the shooting, about what was said and done, prosecutors might be offering him some form of immunity or at least delaying charges against him until after Johnson's trial. But here's the problem with that theory. Carlos is denying everything prosecutors say he did. He's not cooperating. He's claiming innocence. So it doesn't seem like he's playing ball with prosecutors to testify against Johnson. Possibility 2. Prosecutors are still building a case against Carlos. Charging someone as an accomplice to murder requires proving that they knew the murder was going to happen and that they intentionally facilitated it. If Carlos claims he had no idea Johnson was going to get a gun and start shooting, that becomes harder to prove. Prosecutors might be waiting for more evidence. Maybe Johnson will eventually flip on Carlos and admit they planned it together. Possibility 3. There's simply not enough evidence to charge Carlos right now. As frustrating as that is, prosecutors need to be absolutely certain they can prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. If they charge Carlos prematurely and lose, he can never be charged again for the same crime. So they're being careful. But the Meeks family? They're done waiting. They want Carlos charged. They want him behind bars. They want him to face the same consequences that Quadajah Johnson is facing. And they're not going to stop demanding accountability until that happens. While Carlos is in court proclaiming his innocence and Quadajah is fighting the charges against her, Romika's family is still grieving. Romika's mother is raising her grandson, a 7-year-old boy. That little boy still asks about his mommy. He still doesn't fully understand why she's not coming home. He's processing trauma that most adults couldn't handle. Romika's siblings have been vocal on social media, at court hearings, and in the media. They're keeping her memory alive. They're demanding justice. They're making sure that everyone knows Romika was more than a victim. She was a loving mother, a devoted daughter, a caring sister, and they're furious that Carlos is still walking free. Quadajah Johnson's next court appearance is scheduled for February 3rd. That's when we'll get more details about those 5 additional charges, what the trial timeline looks like, and whether the defense has any new evidence to present. If Johnson's lawyers really do have surveillance video or 911 recordings that contradict the state's case, February 3rd might be when they start presenting that evidence to the judge. They'll need to convince the court that there's enough reasonable doubt to either get the charges reduced or to get Johnson released on bond while she awaits trial. But based on how this hearing went, with the judge denying bond again, it doesn't look like the court is buying what the defense is selling. As for Carlos, it's still unclear whether he'll ever be formally charged. His statement might have hurt him more than helped him. By denying everything so emphatically, he's backed himself into a corner. If prosecutors can prove he's lying, if they can show video evidence of him restraining Romika, or if Johnson eventually testifies against him, Carlos is going to have a very hard time explaining why he lied. The truth is going to come out eventually. And when it does, Carlos might regret speaking out at all. This case is a reminder of just how dangerous co-parenting situations can become when emotions aren't kept in check. Romika was just trying to drop her son off at school. That's it. A routine Monday morning task that millions of parents do every single day without thinking twice. But because Carlos couldn't handle co-parenting maturely, because Quadajah couldn't accept that Carlos had a child with another woman, Romika is gone. A 6-year-old boy is traumatized for life. A mother has lost her daughter. Siblings have lost their sister. And for what? Because 2 adults couldn't walk away from a confrontation? Because they chose violence over communication? Cases like this are why experts recommend supervised custody exchanges, public locations with security cameras, and neutral third-party drop-offs for high-conflict co-parenting situations. Romika probably thought a school drop-off was safe. Public. Lots of people around. Who would be reckless enough to start violence there? She learned the answer the hard way. Here's what I want to know from you. Do you believe Carlos's story? Is he telling the truth about just trying to defuse the situation, or is he lying to save himself from being charged as an accomplice? What do you think those 5 additional charges against Johnson are? Assault? weapons charges, or something else? Will Johnson take a plea deal, or is she going to take this case to trial? And if she goes to trial, do you think she has any chance of winning with a self-defense argument? Should Carlos be charged as an accomplice to murder? Does his role in allegedly restraining Romika make him just as guilty as Johnson? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear what you think about Carlos's statement and where this case is headed. Also, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so we get to talk about the February 3rd hearing or any updates about whether Carlos will finally be charged. Share this video. Let people know what Carlos said at court. Let them hear his side of the story and decide for themselves whether he's telling the truth or trying to avoid accountability. See you at the next court date.